All right, one of the things that kind of is the impetus for financing is divorces, and whether it's somebody having to refinance to buy out the other spouse with the equity in the property, or it's a spouse going to buy a new home, divorce is always going to create some opportunity and also some challenges as it relates to our world. Kristen, we recently were going through something that doesn't even apply to couples getting a divorce. Even people that are, boyfriend and girlfriend or engaged that are buying homes together need to be aware of this. What's the biggest challenge that you see as it relates to going through something like this?
What we're seeing a lot right now is that when couples split, somebody naturally gets the home. One party keeps the home, but do they also keep the nice low interest rate that they obtained in the last few years? So this is a bit of a conflict that we've had come up several times with couples. When a divorced party has to refinance, that interest rate's going to go up. That causes a hardship. When someone has to purchase a new home, the interest rate is clearly going to go up. There's all sorts of issues that arise when everybody wants to keep that lower interest rate they had a few years ago, and they can't.
I think one of the other things that you'll see is when there are two individuals that are married where they're jointly obligated on the mortgage, and how we count that against the debt to income ratio if one's in the midst of trying to refinance or the house is being sold. As long as we have the divorce agreement and the divorce decree and the marital settlement agreement, there are some things that can help spouses out as it relates to the obligation.
If the obligation has been signed off by a judge that the ex-spouse is responsible for it, we can eliminate it. What I think
when you say eliminate it from what?
From their debt to income ratios, the future purchaser. Mm-hmm. But as we know, sometimes divorce could take years, and folks will want to maybe buy a home before that has been finalized. And we, unfortunately or fortunately for us, we operate in a homestead state. So if you buy a home as a married couple, you both are on that title of that home. Title represents the ownership of the home. The mortgage is simply who owns the debt for it. But you are then on that home and you are responsible for that home. So what we run into issues with is when a spouse wants to go buy another primary residence without having that finalized yet, can present a lot of challenges, if not be kind of the end all until that is finalized or it's been determined by a judge. Who's going to assume the property? Who's going to assume that legal responsibility for the existing mortgage, getting somebody off of a title? And then secondly, probably the biggest thing that we run into, which is a challenge, is that because somebody is still married in a homestead state that we are here in Florida, that ex-spouse goes to buy another home, but they're still legally married. Their ex-spouse has to sign on the title of that home as well, which can present a lot of challenges. And it's
not obligated, but acknowledging that spouse is getting a new primary residence here in the state of Florida. I think along with the divorce and the settlement agreement, somebody that's wanting to use child support or alimony can also be a little bit tricky, because there is a time that you have to show that you've been receiving this. So somebody that just goes and gets divorced now, if they're only receiving month 1 or month 2 of said alimony, that can create some problems. What are some of the things that people can do in advance if they do have a relationship that has a little bit of friendliness to it to help the spouse transition that's buying a new home?
So if you're estranged spouse, before your divorce is final, if they're agreeable to paying some amount of alimony or child support ahead of anything going before a judge, put it in writing. Get a document signed between the two of you, just stating exactly what the agreement is that you've come up with here. And then keep records. Keep everything documented. Don't accept cash because it's hard to trace.
It's impossible
to document that, yeah.
But just having transfers each month directly from the other party, or checks between the two of you. Keep all of that. Keep receipts.
What's the time period that, depending on the type of financing, how long does somebody have to?
Typically, it's 6 months. You have to show evidence of 6 months of receipt in order to use it for qualifying purposes, as far as income. I think you're right too, and if you do record a document or have a document signed outside of a judge, at the point. You obviously want it notarized, it needs to be notarized, and it needs to be considered a legal document. And many attorneys will actually draw the document up for you prior to going in front of a judge, if it's agreeable on both parties, of course, which isn't always the case, but if it is the case, that can certainly help from a qualifying standpoint, being able to utilize that income to help purchase a home.
In some cases, there are couples that are not married, that are not even engaged. There is still some protection there, seeking some legal counsel. We're certainly not qualified to do that, but a division of assets can help force some movement to get some sort of clarity on how that is being addressed as it relates to either having that other spouse refi or to buy out the portion of the equity that's in that property. Any other challenges that you can think of as it relates to divorces?
Divorces can always present a challenge, but I think it is worth noting that the agencies, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, when you're buying a spouse out, equity position, a spouse out, that means you're taking money, you're taking cash out of the home in which you own, and you're giving that away. That's not considered a cash out refinance. You're always going to pay a slightly higher rate of interest on a cash out refinance versus just what's called a rate and term, right? We're just refinancing. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are both in agreement upon the fact that you can actually take that money out, cash out of your home, and give that to your soon-to-be ex-spouse, and it's not considered a cash out. So you get a little bit of an advantage on an interest rate.
The advantage, in addition to the interest rate, is you can go to a higher loan-to-value, where on a cash-out refi, you'd be stuck at 80%. You can go up to 95% on a spousal buyout as a rate-term refi.
Yep.
Another thing to be cognizant of is when you're getting divorced is if you are both on the mortgage at the time of the divorce, even the party that doesn't retain ownership of the home could still be dinged on their credit for late payments on that mortgage. If the ex isn't making those payments on time, it's going to hurt them.
Yeah, I had a call just recently from somebody asking about, hey, how damaging will it be if I just stop making the mortgage payments? My spouse isn't paying his half of it. What will happen if I decide to not pay it in an effort to try to force his hand? Well, you may be able to force his hand, but you're going to completely decimate your credit score and your ability to buy in the future because conventional financing, FHA financing, you can have one 30-day late in the last 12 months, but after that, it's going to prevent you from being able to move forward.
I think it's important that you mentioned that as well, because we've seen it a bunch of times, and I have borrowers that have said, well, my spouse pays that. And unfortunately, you have to advise them that your spouse hasn't been paying it, and there's a legal responsibility when they signed that note that you're both responsible for the payment, and divorce is no reason not to make the payment.
And paying it in full as well. Just because you decide, hey, I'm going to pay my half and expect the spouse to pay the other half, you are
partial payments are just as bad as a late payment.
Exactly.
So that is a very, very good point, and it's something we unfortunately see a little too often.
And unfortunately, we have to talk about this often too, because obviously divorces being as prevalent as they are today in today's society, it becomes something that comes to our desk quite a bit. So hopefully that's not the situation you're in, but if you're in need of talking about what that could look like in the future, or you're going through that now, we're happy to advise as it relates to the mortgage side of things. This has been another edition of Debunked with Doering. If you have questions about things that we have not addressed in any of the previous episodes, please reach out to us at askchris@mygatormortgage.com, or feel free to call us directly at the office at 352-244-0840. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.